Now I'm going to demonstrate the basic and beginner squat technique for you. Squat is a very important movement because it's involved in just about any time you're going down to pick things up off the floor or bending in some way. You can use the squat technique to save your back. So it's very important that we do it correctly. So I'm going to turn to the side and demonstrate this for you. Now it's important that you understand the hip hinge. So the hip hinge is in a separate video. It's called the hip hinge. And the hip hinge allows you to keep your back arched while you squat. So you'll need to watch that video as well. So in this squat, what we're going to do is we're going to stand with our feet a little bit more than shoulder width apart and the toes turned out slightly. We're going to take our index finger and thumb and separate them and put them on our thigh like this. And we're going to be sliding the thumbs and index fingers down our thigh as we descend into the squat. The most important thing about this squat is that we're not going to be bending forward. We're going to be sitting back and keeping the back arched as we go back by hinging through the hips. In other words, we're going to be bending forward from the hips, not from the back. Okay, so I'll put my index finger and thumb on my thigh. I'll be standing up straight, and then I'm going to hip hinge and sit backward, keeping the back arched while I slowly descend. You don't have to go really deep. And then on the way up, I'm going to push my hips through so they come forward. Let's look at that again. Index finger and thumb on the thigh. On the way down, hip hinge. You have the feeling of the buttocks coming up into the air and the back arching. And on the way up, the hips come through. So the basic feeling is that on the way down, the buttocks tracks backward with the back arched, and on the way up, the hips come forward as you ascend. That's your two basic thoughts you want to keep in mind. So let's do it again. Index finger and thumb, track backwards. I'm going to go a little deeper this time to get down to where my index finger and thumb are just above my knee. That's pretty good for me. Okay, now before I come up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tighten the abdominal brace and I'm going to squeeze my shoulder blades together. These are two separate videos that I've created. I want you to tighten the abdominal brace. You have to watch that video, and you're going to have to watch the scapular retraction video. Those two techniques, those two muscle contractions allow you to stiffen muscles in your spine before you come up in the squat. And what that does is, especially if you're lifting something, it protects your lower back. So you've got really a lot of protective mechanisms happening during this technique. Your back is arched, therefore it's protecting your lumbar disc, and your muscles are tightened, stabilizing the lumbar vertebrae. So let's go through the whole thing one more time. Index finger and thumb on the thigh, descend downward, sticking the buttocks backward and arching the back. Come down to when the index finger and thumb are just about over the knee. And by the way, you don't want to go, your knees do not go forward. I'll demonstrate that in a second. And then I tighten my abdominal muscles and my shoulder blades come together as I come up and the hips come through. What I just said about the knees is important. When you go down in this maneuver, you don't want to squat like this with your knees going forward. Your knees should come down so they're just above your toes or a little bit in back of your toes. And that means your buttocks has to go backwards. If your knees go forward, your buttocks is not going backwards. Let's do the whole thing one more time. Index finger and thumb, sit back, tighten the abdominal brace and the shoulder blades, and come up and through. And that is the basic squat technique.